The one-handed backhand is arguably the most beautiful shot in tennis, yet its abundance continues to dwindle. When tennis was first invented, the one-handed backhand was the only option, and there was no two-handed backhand until the 1930s. Even still, the one-hander dominated tennis for years. As of August 2025, there are only 8 players in the ATP Top 100 that use a one-handed backhand, with only one, Lorenzo Musetti, being a member of the top 10. Another notable player with this shot is Stefanos Tsitsipas, former world number 3. Compare this to August 2015, 10 years ago, where there were 18 players in the top 100 with a one-hander. In 2015, the one-handed backhand wielders were forces. Players like Federer, Wawrinka, and Thiem were, or would eventually become Grand Slam champions, and others like Gasquet and Dimitrov had the potential to take out anyone outside of the big 3. So, why has the one-hander population decreased? First, let's go over the qualitative reasoning. The strengths of a one-handed backhand include easier access to topspin, longer reach that also helps take away time from your opponent, and potentially a more powerful shot because of the freedom of movement you have without the restriction of your second hand being attached to the racket. One-handers also generally have a strong backhand slice and a strong backhand volley because of how comfortable they are using one hand on the backhand side. As a bonus, you get an automatic increase in sex appeal if you have this shot in your arsenal, but we won't count that. As for the two-hander strengths, it is certainly an easier shot to learn than the one-hander. You need less preparation and time, high balls are easier to hit, and hitting offensive serve returns is also much easier. In general, the two-hander is more consistent because you have the second hand to stabilize your shot. Think of a two-handed backhand player as someone with a sword and a shield, and think of a one-handed backhand player as someone with a double-edged sword. So, which backhand brings more advantages to the table? Most people will say that the two-handed backhand brings more, and will also say that these advantages are why the one-handed backhand is dying. However, because the reasoning used is qualitative, it's hard to measure the exact magnitude of each advantage, so I say choose whichever backhand brings the advantages that are most important to you, including the sex appeal thing if that really matters to you. But seriously, if the two-hander leads to a stronger game, is this result reflected onto the ATP Tour? Let's take a look at the numbers to see if the one-hander really is an inferior shot. Currently, there are 2,177 ATP ranked players. Now, going through each player profile to find out if they have a one-handed backhand or not isn't reasonable, so I'm lucky that there's a website called Tennis Abstract that did it for me. Now, the problem with this is that the lowest ranked one-hander is ATP number 625 according to Tennis Abstract, which leads me to believe that the ATP stops keeping track of what type of backhand a player has if they're too low ranked, because it's unrealistic that not one player ranked under 625 has a one-hander. So, I will be using the ATP Top 500 as my sample. Because of the claims that the two-hander is the stronger backhand, you would expect the rank distribution of one-handers to skew towards the lower ranks. Let's see if this is true. There are currently 39 one-handers in the ATP Top 500, which is 7.8% of the top 500. If it's truly more difficult to reach the higher ranks with a one-handed backhand, you would expect to see a decrease in the percentage of one-handers as you approach the top ranks. So, let's take a look at the best of the best, the ATP Top 100. If the one-hander really is an inferior shot, the percentage of players in the top 100 using a one-y should be less than 7.8%. But it so happens that there are 8 players, or 8% of the top 100 using a one-hander, which is roughly the same percent as the top 500. What this statistic tells us is that neither backhand will increase your chances of reaching the top 100, aka neither backhand is better than the other. The amount of one-handed backhand players on tour is almost perfectly proportional to the amount in the top 100. This shows that the distribution isn't skewed towards the lower ranks, which is what is implied when people say the one-hander is an inferior shot. The number of one-handers in the top 100 isn't small because it's more difficult to reach the top 100 with a one-y. It's small just because there aren't many one-handed backhand users in general. According to the numbers, hypothetically, if 50% of ATP athletes used a one-hander, then 50% of the top 100 would also have a one-hander. So, why is the one-hander disappearing if it's not a deficient shot? I believe it's just because the two-hander, as mentioned before, is easier to learn. Coaches aren't teaching newer generations of players the one-hander because the learning curve is slower. It has the same potential as the two-hander, but it takes a little longer to get there. One thing I noticed was that you do see a lot of one-handers at the beginner/amateur level, but I don't really consider these real one-handers. When I walk into my local tennis center, I see tons of adult beginner players who most likely got started later in their life and who use a one-y, but not with the greatest technique. Most of the time, their backhand has a very linear swing path and with an open face that gives the ball backspin, sort of like they're just hacking at the ball. This is counterintuitive to the idea that the one-hander is great at generating topspin. Many players that began playing tennis without proper coaching will gravitate towards a one-handed backhand because it just feels more natural. But without coaching, it's hard to learn the correct technique, which we all know is very important for one-handers. When these beginner players eventually do reach out to a coach, they will probably be encouraged to use two hands, either because the coach doesn't know how to teach a one-hander since it's so rare, or because the two-hander is just an easier shot to learn. So, which backhand should you have? It really depends on two factors. The first is how committed you are to tennis. Again, the two-hander has a faster learning curve, so if you only play tennis occasionally or want to get good fast, the two-hander might be the better option. On the other hand, if you're serious about playing tennis and play very often, you should take a look at the second factor, which is your play style. The two-hander is without a doubt a more defensive shot than the one-hander. If you like playing longer rallies and really grinding out points, then you should definitely play with a two-hander. This is not to say that its offensive capabilities are weak, because they most certainly are not. On the other hand, if you like ending points quickly with an aggressive game, you might like the one-hander. But this is only if you would really like an aggressive playstyle, because I will say that the two-hander's offensive capabilities are stronger than the one-hander's defensive capabilities, although you can usually fall back onto your backhand slice. With the one-hander, it's high risk, high reward. In summary, the one-y and the two-y bring different things to the table, but they've been shown to be equally as strong as reflected by the ATP Tour. Take this with a grain of salt though, because the sample size I used to collect data is not huge.